Jace Varen wiped the sweat from his brow with a grease-stained sleeve, squinting up at the twin suns that made the Kestrel 9 salvage yards shimmer like a mirage. Heat waves danced off twisted metal and cracked hulls, giving the place a dreamlike shimmer, or a nightmare's edge, depending on your mood, and Jace's was teetering. He stepped over a gutted cargo hauler, its sides peeled like a tin can, and made his way toward Bay 42. That was where they dragged the supposed alien wreck earlier in the week. Rumor had it, it came from deep in the out zone, drifted in dead and quiet, no registry, no signals, and no interest until it hit the auction block for the price of a decent toaster. Jace had bought it on a whim. Well, not entirely a whim. His gut said there was something off about it. Not bad off. Mysterious off. He liked mysterious. Mysterious meant opportunity. When he reached the bay, the blast doors opened with a reluctant groan, revealing the object of his gamble. The ship was ugly, not in a way that implied poor craftsmanship, but in the way that suggested it hadn't been built with human aesthetics in mind. The lines were too sharp, the wings too asymmetrical, and the hull had a chitinous texture that shimmered like beetle carapace under the lights. It looked like it had grown instead of been assembled. He circled it slowly, one hand on his tool belt, eyes scanning every detail. It was about the size of a long-range fighter, though heavier at the rear. Scorch marks along the port side hinted at weapons damage. Jace noted plasma scoring and what looked like organic erosion, a strange mix. He didn't recognize the tech, which was saying something. 12 years of patching up everything from Terran corvettes to Varnaxi drip ships, and this was the first time he felt like a kid poking at a puzzle box. He grinned. "You're gonna make me work for it, huh?" The internal systems were dormant, barely. He'd spent the last 2 days setting up an external power flow, trickling juice into the grid to see what would come alive. So far, nothing. No AI, no NAV, not even a flicker from the diagnostics port. Until today, as he connected the final relay, a hum filled the bay. Low, like a growl resonating through the deck. Jace froze. Lights flickered along the undercarriage of the ship, chasing each other like bioluminescent veins. Somewhere deep inside, metal shifted. Something unlocked. He reached for his datapad. "Okay, girl, let's see what you're hiding." The screen exploded with symbols, none of them Terran. A hard reboot didn't help. Static spilled across his tools, and the lights in the bay flickered again. Then came the noise. A hissing, grinding sound like compressed steam and metal teeth. A hatch on the ship's side slowly peeled open with a breathy exhale. Cold mist spilled out. Jace stepped back, suddenly aware of how alone he was. From the hatch, something moved. It stepped out on 2 legs, hunched, its silhouette partially obscured by the fog. Clawed feet clicked against the floor. As the mist cleared, Jace got a good look. The creature stood at least 7 feet tall, though it moved like something accustomed to crouching in tight spaces. Its body was a fusion of muscle and lean, wiry armor that clung to it like a second skin. Dark fur covered parts of its limbs, and its face, wolf-like but wrong in subtle, unnerving ways, bore a tight snarl. One eye gleamed with artificial light. The other was all amber fury, and in its hand, a blade of brilliant white plasma vibrating at the edge of control. Jace did the only thing he could think of. He raised both hands and grinned nervously. "Well, hello to you too." The creature lunged. Jace barely ducked in time, the blade slicing a swath of heat through the air where his head had been. He stumbled back, grabbed a spanner off his tool cart, and held it like a bat. Not that it would help. "Hey, easy. I'm the one who woke you up." That earned him a pause. A short one. The creature growled something guttural, then snapped in crisp Galactic standard. "Identify." Jace Varen. Mechanic. Independent. "I bought this ship. Legally. The blade hummed lower, but it didn't switch off. You salvaged a war burial vessel. Explain yourself. Jace blinked. It was for sale. At auction. Abandoned and dead. I figured I'd fix it up. I didn't know there was a person inside. The alien took a slow step forward. You would have dismantled me. Not if I'd known you were in there, Jace said. Look, I'm sorry, all right? You were in stasis or something. I wasn't trying to, whatever, loot your coffin. I fix ships. That's what I do. The creature stared at him for a long, unbearable second, then finally, deactivated the blade. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. I am Kael, it said, last of the Stray-Claw Dominion. Pilot class. And this vessel is mine. Well, it's got my name on the ownership record now. So, I think we're going to have to negotiate, Jace muttered, then instantly regretted it when Kael's ears pinned back. Negotiate? Kael growled. Do humans always insult the waking dead with contract law? Jace held up his hands again. Okay. Not the time. Look, you're injured. Let me get you a med kit. No strings. Kael didn't move. Jace took a slow step toward the tool bench, never turning his back. He retrieved a field kit and tossed it lightly. Kael snatched it midair, inspected it with narrowed eyes, then sank down against the wall. He tended to a wound on his thigh, burned fur and exposed flesh, probably from whatever hit the ship. Jace crouched a few feet away, watching. So, were you flying solo out there? He asked cautiously. Kael didn't look up. I was betrayed. By who? Kael gave a cold laugh. Everyone. The silence that followed was heavier than anything the ship's systems had thrown at him. Jace sat cross-legged now, hands dangling between his knees. So what now? He asked. You're free. Ship's yours. You gonna fly off and disappear? Kael looked at him then, eyes sharp with something unreadable. No. The ship is damaged. Memory core fragmented. Power unstable. I awoke only because you rewired life support to propulsion. Poorly, I might add. Jace couldn't help but chuckle. You're welcome. I did not thank you. Well, you're alive, aren't you? Kael stared a moment longer, then closed his eyes. Barely. They sat in silence a while longer, the hum of the ship's systems slowly settling back into dormancy. The lights dimmed again, flickering once more, as if unsure whether to stay on. Jace stood first. I'm going to get some food. I've got nutrient packs and synthetic jerky. Not exactly banquet material, but you look like you haven't eaten in 100 years. Kael didn't reply. As Jace turned toward the bay doors, he heard a gruff voice behind him. I'll take the jerky. He paused, grinned to himself, and walked out, muttering under his breath. Knew you were a meat guy. Behind him, the ship pulsed with a soft glow, as though recognizing both pilot and stranger. And deep within its fractured memory banks, a dormant AI stirred and watched. Jace didn't know it yet, but the deal he'd made in a half-baked hunch was about to become the most important decision of his life, and possibly the most dangerous. Jace's fingers danced across the rusted console, a symphony of clicks and whirs filling the cockpit. He grunted with frustration as he adjusted the final sequence on the panel, the broken alien ship responding only half-heartedly to his commands. The ship had been abandoned, left to rot in a scrapyard among other forgotten technology. A relic of a distant war, a war Jace had no real knowledge of, yet he was now entangled with its remnants. You're one stubborn piece of junk, Jace muttered under his breath, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. The cockpit, dark and cluttered with exposed wiring and old tools, felt like a tomb. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and oil. He had thought buying this ship was a steal, an oddity he could fix up and sell for parts. But now, weeks into the restoration, it was clear that it was far more complicated than he had imagined. Even the ship's AI seemed more broken than functional. He glanced at the other side of the cockpit, where a small, metal crate sat in the corner, the source of all this trouble. Inside it was the alien he had found, or rather, the alien who had found him. Kael, a wolf-like creature, no larger than an average human, but brimming with a kind of raw, barely contained energy that unnerved Jace every time their eyes met. The first time Jace had found Kael, the alien had been barely alive, his body slumped against the ship's damaged interior, his breathing shallow, and his bloodied fur matted with wounds. At first, Jace had thought he was another casualty of the ship's mysterious history. But upon closer inspection, he realized Kael was more than a wounded survivor. He was a soldier, a fighter, and perhaps an escapee from something even darker. Jace had never been the hero type. He wasn't brave, nor particularly skilled in anything beyond basic mechanical repairs. But something about Kael had drawn him in. Maybe it was the raw, untamed strength in his eyes, or the way his pulse had quickened when Jace had touched the ship's controls, as if Kael himself was more attuned to the ship than anyone could guess. For the past week, Kael had been recovering, mostly in silence. His deep, rumbling growl had replaced any words of gratitude, and his eyes followed Jace with an intensity that made him wonder if the alien was silently judging every move he made. Jace had tried to engage with him, asking questions, offering food, but Kael didn't respond in the typical manner. Instead, he would just look at Jace with that deep, unblinking stare, as if waiting for something. What? Jace had no idea. But every day, the alien seemed to grow stronger. And the ship, well, it seemed to be waking up too. Okay, Jace muttered, pushing a final button. The hum of the ship's systems shifted, a low, mechanical groan vibrating through the metal walls. We're getting somewhere at least. Before he could take a step back, a low growl echoed from behind him, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He didn't need to turn around to know it was Kael. The alien's presence always seemed to fill a room with its quiet, barely contained force. Jace stiffened but turned anyway, meeting the yellow-green eyes of Kael. "What is it?" Jace asked, his voice more frustrated than curious. His patience with the alien was running thin. Kael growled again, a deep rumble from his chest, before pushing himself off the crate where he had been lounging. His body rippled with muscle as he stood, his movements fluid and predatory, despite the weariness still lingering in his stance. "You can't be serious," Jace said, more to himself than the alien, before he raised his voice again. "You want to get involved in this? It's not a fight. It's—" Kael's eyes narrowed, his posture straightening, and he took a step toward Jace, his large, clawed feet making no sound on the ship's metal floor. His head tilted slightly, his dark fur bristling. The low growl that had been rumbling in his throat increased in volume, turning into something much darker, more menacing. Jace hesitated. The alien didn't speak. He rarely did, but the message was clear. There was no doubt now. Kael was not a passive passenger on this ship. He wasn't here to wait for a rescue. He wasn't here to be healed. He was here for a reason, a purpose that Jace was still struggling to understand. "You're not making sense," Jace muttered, but he stopped when he realized how pointless it was to argue. Kael wasn't interested in talking. He was a creature of action, not words. The more Jace tried to fix the ship, the more he realized that Kael was tied to the ship's very core, almost as if it had been waiting for him. "All right," Jace said, standing up straighter and throwing his hands in the air. "Let's get this straight, then. I'm trying to fix this wreck, and you're here, what? Waiting for someone to come and pick you up? Or are you just planning to tear my head off if I don't fix whatever it is you're really after?" Kael's growl dropped, and for a moment, Jace swore he saw a flicker of something. Pain, confusion, maybe even regret, in the alien's eyes. But it was gone so quickly that Jace wondered if he had imagined it. The growl fell silent, replaced by a long, tense pause. Finally, Kael turned toward the ship's console, his claws tapping lightly against the metal. His voice, when it came, was low and guttural, strange to Jace's ears, but with an unmistakable sense of urgency. "Activate the systems," Kael said. His voice was barely a whisper, but the command was clear. Jace blinked, shocked for a moment. "Wait, what?" Kael turned back, his yellow eyes locked onto Jace's. The air between them seemed to charge with something unseen. "Activate the systems. It's time." Jace's mind raced. He had never heard the alien speak before, not in such a direct, authoritative way. There was no time to question it. Jace immediately moved toward the console, his fingers tapping across the keys. As he did, a light flickered on the ship's main screen, signaling that the core was coming online. The ship was awakening, much like Kael had been. The strange symbiosis between the two was now undeniable. "All right, but if this goes wrong, don't blame me," Jace said, his tone strained. Kael didn't reply. Instead, he remained still, his gaze fixed on the flickering console, as if he were willing the ship to move on its own. There was a tension in the air now, and Jace could feel it. Whatever Kael had been waiting for was finally here. Something had triggered in the ship, a deeper connection than Jace had anticipated. Then, with a sudden shift in the atmosphere, the AI that had been silent for days came to life. Its voice, mechanical but carrying the weight of something far older, echoed through the cockpit, reverberating in the metal walls. Primary systems online. Navigation arrays engaged. Hostile detection protocols initiated. Jace froze. What the hell did I just activate? Kael stepped forward, his eyes flashing with something dangerous, something calculating. "My past," he said simply. And Jace realized, with growing dread, that he hadn't just repaired a broken ship. He had unknowingly unleashed something far more dangerous. And Kael was the key to it all. The real question now was the past something they could outrun? The hum of the newly awakened ship reverberated through Jace's bones. He stood motionless at the control console, eyes fixed on the display as streams of alien code flickered across the screen in a language he couldn't comprehend. Beside him, Kael watched with a predatory stillness, his sharp features etched with grim purpose. The wolf-like alien was no longer just a mysterious passenger. He was commander of something vast and ancient. Jace could feel it in every system hum, every pulse of energy through the floor beneath them. "Ship systems are stabilizing," Jace muttered, more to fill the silence than for Kael's benefit. "Weapon arrays are activating themselves." "That's not normal." "It is now," Kael replied without looking at him. His voice, though low, seemed to claim the room. "This ship wasn't built to be passive. It remembers what it was." "And what was that exactly?" Jace asked, rubbing a hand through his hair. "Because right now it feels like I've just rebuilt a weapon of mass destruction with a grudge." Kael turned slowly. It was a judgment vessel, a sentinel. It operated outside any command hierarchy. When it saw corruption, it erased it, and it only obeyed one kind of pilot, those who had lost everything. Jace swallowed. "You mean it chose you?" Kael didn't answer directly. He returned his gaze to the central interface. "When I fled the Dominion, I didn't run for survival. I ran to remember who I was before they used me. I ended up in this ship's remains not by chance. It called to me. The Dominion." Jace had heard the name whispered among smugglers and freighter pilots. The ruling body across dozens of star systems, full of shadowy councils and enforcers. No one dared challenge them openly. And here was Kael, a living piece of that machinery, now weaponized against it. I didn't sign up to start a war, Jace said, though his voice lacked the conviction it once had. You didn't start anything, Kael said. They did. You just didn't walk away. The ship's AI crackled to life again. Its voice had grown more refined since reactivation. Deeper, smoother, yet laced with something ancient and stern. Threat signal detected. Long-range interceptor ping. Vessel ID matches Dominion patrol class. Jace cursed under his breath and ran a quick diagnostic. They found us? That was fast. Kael moved to the central display, studying the trajectory. We're not ready to engage. Not yet. What do you mean we're not ready? The weapons are online. The ship wants a fight. Not yet, Kael repeated. Let them follow. I need to show you something. Before Jace could object, Kael entered a set of commands into the console with surprising ease, as if the ship were merely an extension of himself. The stars outside twisted into a spiral as the ship surged into sublight travel, leaving the warning beacon behind. They didn't speak for several minutes. The tension in the air was thick, electrified by the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, Kael gestured toward the viewport, where a field of broken structures floated like ghosts in space. Ruins of massive stations, shattered dreadnoughts, and fragmented habitats hung in eternal silence. The last rebellion, Kael said. They tried to fight back. Farmers, workers, scientists, a fleet of stolen ships, and old weapons. Dominion crushed them in 8 days. Jace stared. What is this place? A graveyard. And a reminder. The ship slowly drifted through the wreckage, navigating between twisted girders and shattered hulls. Here, Kael's silence carried a different weight. Not the cold quiet of a killer, but the burden of memory. He had been part of the machine that caused this destruction. He didn't need to say it. The way he watched the ruins said everything. I was born into the Dominion, Kael said after a long silence. They raised me like a weapon, trained me to sniff out disobedience and extinguish it before it spread. I followed orders because I didn't know what choice looked like. Jace turned to him, his voice softer. And now I make my own decisions. But I can't undo what I've done. I can only make sure it doesn't happen again. The ship's AI interrupted. Interceptor approaching. Estimated time to contact, 12 minutes. Weapons locked. Hailing attempt initiated. Jace stepped toward the console. Should we respond? Kael nodded. Let them speak. The communication channel opened with a burst of static, followed by a sharp voice, polished, precise, and unmistakably Dominion. Unidentified vessel. This is Commander Valen of the DSS Axiom. You are operating a stolen ship classified as Class E artifact. You will power down and prepare for boarding, or you will be destroyed. Kael's eyes glinted. Valen, he whispered. I know that name. Jace glanced at him. Old friend. Old handler. Jace toggled the mic. Listen, Commander Valen. This ship was found abandoned and restored legally under salvage codes. We haven't harmed anyone. You don't need to do this. There was a brief pause, then a colder response. You are harboring a Class R fugitive. Kael Rin of the Arc 7 Reclamation Unit. Your ship is a weapon. You will not receive a second warning. Kael leaned forward, his voice like thunder. I remember you, Valen. You tried to wipe my memories. Burn my unit from the records. Left me to die, so your spotless war record wouldn't be stained. I survived. I remember. And now so will the galaxy. Jace stared at him, stunned. Valen's reply came quickly. So you are alive. A shame. You should have stayed dead. Kael ended the channel with a sharp motion. Jace, prep the ship for evasion. I'm not fighting here. You sure? We could take them. Kael shook his head. Not yet. This fight can't be won with fire. We need to expose them before we strike. Then where are we going? To the source. Dominion's central relay. If we can broadcast what they've done, What I've seen, they can't bury it. No more shadows. Jace exhaled. All right, but we're going to need more than guts and memory logs to get through that wall. Kael stared out at the ruins one last time before turning. We have a ship. We have a truth. And we have each other. That's more than they ever expected. As the ship pulled away from the graveyard, the Dominion interceptor in pursuit, a quiet resolve settled over both of them. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was a reckoning, and they were done running. The Dominion's central relay station loomed ahead like a scar against the stars, a fortress of black steel and layered shields suspended in orbit around a dead planet. Thousands of comm nodes pulsed across its structure, each a thread in the Dominion's vast neural net, a system designed to control, suppress, and silence dissent across half the galaxy. As the ship approached under stealth protocols, Jace felt the weight of it settle across his chest. One wrong move, and they would be reduced to atoms. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a monument to absolute power. Kael stood beside him, silent and focused, his posture tense with purpose. His fur, now sleek and restored, shifted slightly with the low hum of the ship's systems. His eyes were locked on the station ahead, not with fear, but with a storm of memory and vengeance. Final approach, the ship's AI said calmly. Stealth matrix holding. External scans minimal. The station is not yet aware of our presence. Jace exhaled, gripping the edge of the console. Let's hope it stays that way. Kael turned to him. We won't be invisible for long. Once I breach the relay's core, every sensor on the station will light up. Jace met his gaze. You're sure the data will broadcast system-wide? Kael nodded once. Everything the Dominion tried to erase, names, experiments, black sites, the failed purge of my unit, it's all stored in the ship's deep archive. The station has a quantum transmitter. Once linked, the data will ripple through every Dominion channel. They won't be able to contain it. And what happens to us after that? Kael didn't answer immediately. His silence was louder than any spoken word. They both knew. There was no plan for escape. No backup waiting in the wings. This was a suicide run dressed in purpose. The ship drifted closer, threading the needle between two patrolling drones. Its hull shimmered faintly, cloaked by its ancient stealth tech. Jace guided it with steady hands. Every nerve in his body braced for alarms that didn't come. He brought them into a narrow docking trench beneath the relay, a forgotten maintenance shaft with just enough clearance. They landed with a gentle thud. Docking successful, the AI confirmed. Atmospheric readings nominal. External pressure stabilized. Kael rose from his seat, retrieving the small data module containing the archives. Jace followed, pulling on a vest lined with patchwork armor plates and a sidearm that felt laughably insufficient. They moved through the connecting corridor without speaking, their footsteps absorbed by the ship's carpeted panels. When a hatch hissed open, cold station air flooded in, dry, metallic, and tinged with ozone. The interior of the relay was quiet, sterile. Lights flickered in methodical rows above them. No alarms. No guards. Kael moved with precision, his memory guiding them through old schematics and patterns of patrols long since ingrained in his mind. Jace stuck close behind, sweat prickling at his temples, his breath shallow as the minutes stretched. They passed through 2 levels, avoiding surveillance fields and sliding between shadows. Finally, Kael halted a sealed door flanked by an old Dominion insignia. He pressed his palm to the control pad, and it scanned the biosignature embedded in his neural tissue, remnants of his old life. The lock disengaged with a heavy clunk. "This is it," Kael said, stepping inside. The relay core was a massive chamber pulsing with light, holographic screens orbiting a central crystalline array. The hum of raw data was nearly deafening. Kael approached the interface and inserted the module. The system accepted it instantly, lines of foreign code spilling across the central hub. Uploading archive, the AI announced through Kael's comm unit. Estimated completion, 90 seconds. Then everything changed. A shriek of klaxons shattered the quiet. Lights strobed red. Metal shutters slammed over the entrance behind them. Above, automated turrets unfurled from the ceiling like mechanical vipers, locking on with cold precision. Jace ducked to cover. Guess they noticed. Kael didn't flinch. He stood tall, his claws at his sides, eyes flashing gold. Protect the core, no matter what. Turrets opened fire. Jace returned shots from behind a pillar, trying to disable their targeting nodes. Kael moved like liquid death, dodging, leaping, tearing into machinery with his claws. Sparks rained down. Smoke filled the air. The module continued its broadcast, humming with growing intensity. Outside the chamber, heavy footsteps echoed, boots. Dominion guards. Jace cursed and reloaded. We've got company. Kael met the oncoming squad with ferocity, moving through them like a shadow of vengeance. He didn't hesitate. Every move was calculated, brutal, but not without purpose. Jace watched, stunned, as Kael drove a spear-like shard of metal into one soldier's exosuit, disabling the power core with surgical precision. Then came the voice. "Kael," said Valen from the comms. "I told you to stay dead." Kael turned slowly, blood dripping from one claw. "And I told you I remember." Valen appeared on the upper deck, flanked by elite Dominion enforcers in obsidian armor. He descended slowly, weapon drawn, eyes full of venomous calm. "You won't change anything," he said. "Even if you broadcast the data, no one will believe it. The Dominion doesn't fall to whispers." "It doesn't have to fall," Kael said. "It just has to be seen." Valen fired. Kael lunged. The blast caught him in the side, spinning him mid-air, but he landed hard and low, tackling Valen with a guttural snarl. The two crashed into the lower platform, locked in combat. Claws met fists, blood met steel. Jace focused on the console. Uploads at 90%. He disabled one turret, then ducked behind a terminal as another sprayed the wall above his head. One of the guards approached him, rifle raised, but Kael, bloodied and limping, drove into the soldier from the side, throwing them both to the ground. The console beeped. "Upload complete," the AI said. "Broadcast active. Dominion relay compromised." A burst of light erupted from the core, illuminating the chamber in blinding white. Across the Dominion's network, the truth bled into every channel. Evidence of genocide, manipulation, re-education camps, the wiping of Kael's entire unit, and the black site where the ship had been buried. In that instant, the silence broke. Kael slumped beside Jace, breathing heavily, his body battered and burned. "It's done," he rasped. Jace dropped beside him. "We did it. We actually did it." Kael looked up at the viewport above as alarms continued to wail. "They'll come for us." Jace nodded. "Let them." But something had changed. In the minutes following the broadcast, Dominion channels went dark. Not because they had shut down the signal, but because they were overwhelmed. Civilian fleets, independent worlds, even defectors within the Dominion itself, all responding. The lie was exposed. Outside, a flicker of ships appeared, not Dominion, not soldiers, but vessels bearing old resistance marks, long thought extinct. The spark Kael had carried in his memory had reignited something larger than either of them. As Dominion soldiers began retreating, disoriented and outmaneuvered, Jace helped Kael to his feet. The ship's AI pinged their comms. Extraction corridor open. Path clear to return vessel. Jace chuckled under his breath. "Looks like someone's on our side now." Kael smiled, blood streaked across his muzzle. The ship always knew. They made their way back through the corridor, the Dominion crumbling behind them. Jace didn't know what would come next, what the galaxy would look like after this. But as they boarded the ship, battered and alive, one truth stood above the chaos. They had broken the silence. And in doing so, they'd given the stars something the Dominion feared most: hope.